Welcome to EVONA Origin Stories, the space podcast where we look to bring you extraordinary leaders from within the sector and their fascinating stories of early life, career, and how they broke into the space industry.
This is episode 7. Our guest today has been a friend to EVONA from our early days, and we're thankful to her for her continued support and collaboration. Today, she shares her heartfelt and sincere story with our listeners, from humble beginnings in a small town near Naples, where she went against the grain of conventional social beliefs and left her hometown to navigate her way through Europe, from being an intern in the corporate world to founding her own commercial space company. She truly is authentic and a voracious human being that has a relentless drive for educating our younger generation on how space is for everyone. And what you guys will find truly inspiring, as I did, is her infectious passion for promoting diversity in space. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bianca Cefalo. Hey Bianca, how you doing?
Hello, Rich. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Long time no speak. How's things?
Oh, crazy.
As always.
Yeah, they're just getting crazier and crazier. But yeah, last time we spoke, I was still in Italy. Things were still very uncertain. Thank God things are now, much more clear, let's say, about COVID, about life.
Good to hear. Well, I just want to start by saying I know how busy you are, so thank you for taking the time to do this and come on our show today. We're really looking forward to it, so thanks for joining us and taking the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I like you guys.
Good, great. Well, look, thanks for spending the time. I guess just to kind of dive into this, first of all, again, thanks for taking the time to come onto our show. It'd be great for our listeners to kind of start from the early days of Bianca and talk us through, I guess, where you sort of started before early career, where you started in life, where you sort of grew up, school, college, that sort of thing, and sort of how you found your way into your early career in Italy, Germany, and eventually in the UK.
Yes, let's start. So I was born in Italy, in Naples, which is in the south of Italy. It's an amazing city near the sea. But I grew up in a smaller town near Naples, which is much, much closer to the Vesuvius, which is called Somma Vesuviana. And anytime I go back there to my parents' house, I can still see from the window the Vesuvius. It's not on the sea, but it's on the other side. And it's a fantastic place to live, to be fair. At the same time, it's not as fantastic when it comes to social beliefs, stereotypes, because any smaller town, especially when you're coming from the south, and it may sound weird how, the Southern Italians may still be quite narrow-minded when it comes to let's say, social and cultural stereotypes, but we still are. And clearly we were when I was a child. We're talking about 34 years ago when I was born. So I grew up in a smaller town, and the main things that really got me where I am now is the financial struggles we had as a family, because of the business that my dad had basically was failing. And this is funny how I learned from that failure since my very, very early stages, how important it is to have business partners you can rely on and it can be trustworthy. So that was a massive lesson for me these days, and how to have everything legally sound before anybody starts to do something that looks sketchy. So I learned that in my very early days. And from that moment, so basically my dad had a business in the automotive. So it was about spare parts, luxury cars, trading them across Europe, vintage cars, everything really had to do with high value, high performance vintage cars. And that was trading across Europe, mainly, not the States. And actually my dad was a self-made millionaire by the time he was 30. But things started to go very wrong when I was born. And so basically I was affected as a person, as a child, and then now as a professional in what I decided to do from that failure. So part of that was really hurtful as a child, when you were seeing things that clearly you are not meant to understand and you are not meant to do, or you are not responsibilities you are not meant to have when you are maybe 5 years old. On the other side, though, I just love the character that both my parents showed, and what they were still doing to try and get ourselves back on our feet. I loved the character that my mom had. She was extremely young. She was 21 when she had me. And so she had to grow into this graceful and strong and tough woman that really was my very first role model. And from my dad, I just learned the love for cars and engineering. Although it was not an engineer, both of them, they are not engineers. I've been the first gen graduate in my family overall, not even just my family, my strict family, but the entire family between cousins and everybody else. And for me, that it all started from a passion for cars, automotive. I was still spending time in the garage with my dad, seeing how he was disassembling cars and how he knew everything, every single piece about a Ferrari, about a Maserati, about everything. And I just loved how everything worked together. I didn't like the car. I didn't like to see the car when it was assembled. I liked to see the car as it was from the inside, because I needed to understand how things work together. And I think that was really the spark I started having towards how things work, towards physics, mathematics. And I was always, because of all the responsibilities, let's say, I had to face in my life, which were bigger than what I was meant to have. I always tried to have an escape from bullies and things that people obviously would tell me, because I wasn't clearly financially wealthy. I was also kind of very geeky, you know, the usual geek. I was overweight. I had my big glasses. I had braces on my feet, all that sort. So I was the usual target of all the bullies when I was a child. I didn't have anything that those children had, but I knew I was smart. And I knew where I was going. I knew what I liked. So my escape, I was escaping into studying and learning things more than the usual average of kids would do there. I was studying astronomy. I was interested in anything that was otherworldly, let's say, probably because I was bored about the usual things that I would see at school. Because, you know, I had seen already enough, so I needed to see more. And this is where it all started. So especially because both my parents, you know, everything that I had to face in their life, from the financial losses of a business, craziness from the family, stereotypes, bullying coming from any parts of the family as well, and outside the family, towards me, towards the family. They always told me, we haven't managed, we couldn't do what we wanted to do. My mom always told me I couldn't go to uni or even to continue to school because my grandparents didn't want to. And I will never allow this to happen to you. Whoever you want to be, whatever you want to do, for us, you are not just the first daughter. It's like you're genderless. For us, gender doesn't mean anything. If you want to be the president of the United States, you become the president of the United States. If you don't want to do anything of that, if you just want to become a boxer, you do boxing classes. So
yeah,
this is where I started then watching Formula One on a regular basis on Sundays. That was my ritual with my family, that safe ritual I had with them. And this is where I got so much interested in aerodynamics for some reason, because when I would look at documentaries about how they would simulate the high performance cars in both from an analysis point of view or in the wind tunnels, you would see colors, you would see how the flow around ourselves or the cars or everything was colorful, was beautiful, was impactful. And because my mom was a makeup artist, that was the artistic side of me. She loved painting, she loved colors, she loved creating stuff out of nothing, she loved art. This is where I got my artistic side from her. And then when I saw aerodynamic simulations, I was like, wow, this is the crossover between the beauty of a painting, because it's super colorful, and the magic of the engineering. So I started saying this out loud at home, and my dad was like, why don't you then become a racetrack engineer? And I was, a racetrack engineer, Formula One. I was, never thought about it. Then, let's see what am I supposed to study to become a racetrack engineer and an aerodynamics expert. So I went literally on the internet. I Googled up, how do you study aerodynamics? And that was aerospace engineering. That was basically the branch of engineering where I could study aerodynamics, high performance cars, fluid dynamics, and all sorts. So I said, oh, well, looks like I will become an aerospace engineer. And it started when I was a kid. I was a teenager again. For me, the whole mathematics, physics, everything was a way for me to really get into a higher level of consciousness, if you may, because I couldn't face, I didn't want to face on a daily basis probably what was happening in my life. So that escapism helped me get in touch more with that part of my life and the brain that were focused on the physics, the mathematics, the beauty of how everything comes together, numbers, geometry. So I said at home, I'm going to become an aerospace engineer. And everybody was like, we have no idea what aerospace engineering is, but if that's what you want to do, you do it. So I enrolled myself at the university in Naples, the Federico II, and I started my aerospace engineering studies. Clearly against many, let's say, popular opinions from my ex-boyfriend to, the usual neighbors that come around and are like, oh, your parents are not engineers, you know that you need to know somebody in the industry to start doing that. You don't know English. Here in Italy, aerospace engineering is not that great. You will have to move away. And I was thinking, yeah, moving away is exactly the reason why I'm doing this. But yeah. I was really telling that. So you go against all of that. And but I didn't care. I blindly believed that that was what I was meant to do for some reason. Like you have a calling, and I was called into aerospace engineering for some reason, which I'm trying to figure it out now. And this is where I started. And then throughout my studies, I met amazing people, amazing new friends, amazing mentors, professors. And again, I was so much into fluid dynamics and aerodynamics for high performance cars, because that was really my obsession. I wanted to work on Formula One, and mostly I wanted to work for Ferrari. That was my thing. I moved on when I was closing my bachelor degree. I was writing my dissertation on a high performance disc brakes for a Ferrari Formula One and any other high performance cars. So that was an experimental a dissertation that was done in the lab, doing loads of simulations, cross correlation in the wind tunnels, so on and so forth. When I was writing that dissertation, I then met a guy from mechanical engineering who was doing something very similar, and he had an idea of, let's say, testing how great was our passion for Formula One. So basically, the Formula student teams, they exist pretty much everywhere in the world, from the States to every different country in Europe. They didn't exist, and also in different cities in the same country. There were many Formula student teams in Italy. None of them existed in Naples. So with this guy, we said, okay, why don't we create our own Formula One student team? And we did it. That was in 2000 and was it before 2008? I remember around 2008 and 2010. Yeah. Overall that period, we created the Formula One, the Formula One student team. It was the first one. It's still going now in Naples. And we went to the racetrack. We participated to the race. We won the third place award. So in that moment, I started realizing, oh, well, actually, I can make stuff happening. I can make stuff happening from zero, but still as a student. I can create teams. I love what I do. And also that it was the first team that had the aerodynamics division, because I really wanted to have aerodynamics embedded in that design of the car. And after the team we had with the first aerodynamics division, all the other teams in Italy started to have aerodynamics on their cars. So that was a big, let's say, a big check and a big pat on my shoulder, when everybody was just telling me I shouldn't even start studying engineering. Now I'm the leader of a new team that didn't exist before, and we even won the prize. So that was a big first great moment. And after that, I moved on to master degrees of aerospace and astronautics engineering. And I've just started realizing that studying more into the niche of fluid dynamics and aerodynamics, there was a branch of aerodynamics that's called hypersonic aerodynamics. And I was, wow. So I can basically apply everything I've learned for aerodynamics on Earth and in the atmosphere to anything that is going outside the atmosphere. And I was, okay, I'm just going to work on space capsules and spacecraft then. And this is where it clicked. And this is where I was, okay, I'm not meant to work on Earth. I'm meant to work for something that is crossing the stratosphere. And this is where I realized, fine, I want to work for space. Now we're working in the space industry, and I started pestering everyone at uni because, again, it was very, very niche. We were just 10 people at that class. I remember during that time, it was 2010. And so again, then you get advices from people. Oh, it's too niche. Oh, it's so very competitive because it's so niche. There are not so many jobs out there, blah, blah, blah. I was fine. Everything I like apparently is very niche and is very competitive. I'm just going to keep going. And this is where I started, basically. And then because I was so annoying to people and my favorite professors, I wanted to move away from Italy for multiple reasons, but also because I thought that moving away from your own home country and learning a new language can just happen if you actually leave. And if you just integrate into new culture and see the beauty of anything else that you didn't know before. So I was just checking in with my professors day in, day out, saying, is there a placement? Is there something, I want to do this and I don't want to do it in Italy. I just want to leave and I want to see something else. And then that happened in August 2013. But that's probably, parts of my career where then I was, that was really the moment where you kind of start telling yourself, oh, I've made again something happen. When I was selected for the NASA InSight Mars mission as a thermofluid dynamic analyst. And the funny thing is that all the niche things I had done and I had studied for during my university years were all the things that those guys at NASA needed for their own mission to Mars. So there I was. See, I blindly believed in everything I wanted to do, and now I'm getting my first job at 23, not even with a master's degree yet, for a Martian mission. And I'm going to move to Berlin, which was exactly the place I wanted to go with a friend a couple of weekends before. So, manifestation works.
Absolutely, it's amazing. I'm so jealous of people that realize their dreams so early on in life. I find it incredibly inspirational. And one of the reasons why I did this podcast is that, Mel Strickland from Slingshot said a similar thing as well. Like similar to you guys both, you realized your dream so early in life. And what I love about it is regardless of friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, telling you continuously and trying to give you negative comments or thoughts of, saying, no, it's too niche. There's not jobs out there. Why do you want to do that? Do this instead. It's a much easier path. A lot of people there would probably crumble and go, they're probably right. It's easier for you to just do X, Y, and Z, where you just kind of relentlessly just move forward and continue to pursue your dream. But I find it brilliant because so many people across the world, regardless of what industry, they just fall into a job or they just fall into a career. So I love it when I speak to people like yourself that realize that dream so early in life and just relentlessly pursue it. And it's amazing now, like you say, you're in the space sector, and that part of it as well. I guess now that you're in it, I come from that sort of automotive background into thermal engineering and, getting yourself into the space sector. Now that you're here and you've been living and breathing it for the last, how many ever years, what is it that you love the most? What is it you love the most about the space sector?
So on a personal level, for me, it's so weird, but for me, it's still that kind that a way to it's my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Which it's even hard to tell, but it is my comfort zone. It's been my comfort zone, again, as I said, since I was a child, and it is still my comfort zone. And when I work on what I'm working at the moment, or what I was working before, space has no boundaries. And this is what everybody's trying to put on people and ourselves. It's like we constantly trying to box people into a label, into a gender, into a stereotype, into a social and cultural belief. Space is nothing like that. There is nothing in space that has a boundary of belief, of race, of the only boundaries you have is clearly, the law of physics that you have to comply with to just get your rockets up and working, and then coming back eventually. But there are really no other boundaries that we as a community put on ourselves. There are no boxes. And this is from a philosophical aspect I love about space, is that you can literally dream, think as big as you want. And this is what I've been holding on my entire life, as I was a child, and then now that I've obviously also started my own business in space, is that you can hold on to the belief that there is so much greatness out there, that why would you not think that greatness is in yourself? So this is more a philosophical really act towards space, and so comforting for me to know that what I love doing and how geeky and nerdy I am, it's something that has actually impacted millions of lives and is going to do the same for the next generations. And the contribution that each and every person can give to the space industry, from, for example, what you are doing, guys, with literally creating communities and awareness around the space industry, to what rocket scientists do, to what astronauts do, to what doctors do. It's just creating an environment that is allowing humanity to really thrive beyond what we've known to be our home so far. We were born here, as famous people say. We were born here. We were not meant to die on Earth. Our next generations are not meant to have a heritage of humanity that didn't really use up every resources they could to make life better, not just for the people that are here now, but for people that will come hundreds, thousands of years later. This is space. This is what for me space means. It's a big concept that goes really beyond business and equations and the daily job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the generational piece that you mentioned there, I completely agree. And that is the sort of the next thing links into what I've talked about. As you know, EVONA and yourselves share a kind of similar passion for demystifying the industry and making space accessible for everyone, regardless of their background, their educational background, whatever it is, to, show them that space is for everyone. And we'd love to know sort of what drives your passion in STEM. Some of the things you've mentioned already, but obviously you do countless stuff for STEM, diversity in space, which is great. We collaborated on something a couple of years ago with STEM. So where does that passion and that drive sort of come from, and why is that so important to you?
It's coming from obviously all the things I've heard and I've been told since I started studying engineering. It's coming obviously from the fact that I am one person coming from a very small town from the south of Italy with absolutely no understanding whatsoever of what is even to get an aerospace engineering degree, to what I've done so far. So the motivation is, if I made it happen to the degree I made it happen, obviously everyone gets, as there is a different extent of success and achievements to everybody. But from my own perspective, coming from where I've come from zero financial stability, nearly being homeless, enforcement agents coming to my house day in and day out because we had to leave, to literally starting a business in the space industry. Well, if I'm here today, many other people that thought that was clearly not a path for them, they can do it. And then there is obviously the social aspects of being, again, still a minority in the industry. When I moved to London, I moved from Berlin. After 5 years, I worked with in collaboration with the German Space Center and ESA, and then NASA, obviously, for the Martian missions. I moved to London and started a corporate job at Airbus Defence and Space. And you know, because we met when I was still working for Airbus. And there I literally realized I was the only woman, not British, under 30, in a boardroom amongst, I don't know how many dozens of the usual white male average over 50.
Yeah.
And I was, how is this happen? I was looking around them like, I'm here for all of them, but where are all of them? Where are the others?
Yeah.
So joining together the fact that I've been moved by rage and revenge against the system, because it's not just because I'm a pretty face coming from an unknown town in Italy with zero prospects of becoming, a successful person in the space industry, to then moving into boardrooms and still being the only woman. I was like, well, probably there are so many other women out there who have the same, who share the same story, we share the same backgrounds, that look like me, because clearly, again, it's not even about where I'm coming from, it's about how I look. I never looked like the usual nerd, although I was when I was a child. Then things changed, apparently. Yeah. And how do I make this accessible to people that want to understand how great is what they can do for the space industry if they want to? And they clearly don't look like the usual Albert Einstein or a Steve Jobs out there, or a Richard Branson, and you name them. So this is where my motivation has come from. And the most beautiful things I've heard from then people who have come back to me, or my mentees, or even guys, men, or non-binary people, or queer people who told me, up to now, I thought I had to pretend I was a person that people wanted to see when I just walked into an office, or I was talking to an investor, or I was, I don't know, getting on a stage. And since the moment I started to know you, I know that I can rock up with my tattoos and my red lipstick, or just look a bit weird, but that's not important. It's important what I have to say. It's important how excellent my presentation is. It's not about how I look. It's about what actually is my substance. And that's been the most rewarding part of the entire journey.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's great to promote that diversity, but also the fact that you've inspired so many people to come out of their shell that maybe didn't have the confidence before to go into those sort of meetings with those sorts of people and just be themselves. Because I think the very nature of that, and when you're, in business, actually being yourself is the strongest currency these days, and having the authenticity. So no, that's incredible. Thanks for sharing. And the next thing was more around sort of failures and achievements, as you know, sort of with various, social media platforms and stuff. I think everybody sees the end product and the sort of highlight reel of successes. They don't sort of see all the sacrifice and the grind that leads up to that. So I guess starting with the failure side of things first, what would you consider throughout your life career so far was your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that failure?
Yeah, so the biggest failures have definitely been my relationships, and they have all to do with my drive into just do the next thing, moving to the next country, and being completely uncompromising. And I've learned a lot from them, especially from the last one. That was, it wasn't the longest relationship I had, but was clearly the most intense, and the person I loved the most in my entire life. And then I've lost a child on the back of that, of wrong decisions. And because I've basically learned that it's not just about achieving something. It's not just about it. I didn't have to be moved by all the sentiments and emotions that were moving that child that was back in Italy, that wanted to show everybody, look, I can do this. I can just do whatever I want, despite all the things you've been telling about me and my family. And I was going also into the relationships with a kind of competition, with a kind of rage, with a kind of motivation, where I was possibly also competing with them. I was probably being also a narcissist and a toxic person myself. And it's been a hard lesson to learn that I could have been so good at what I was doing, let's say in an office or in a boardroom, but I was horrible at just letting myself go and being a person that doesn't need to constantly being in a masculine energy of competition, rage, revenge, and showing the people that I can do things. It's been a long curve learning after my last relationship 3 years ago. And it's also been amazing because I got finally into the let's say, the learning that you don't necessarily need to be enraged all the time to achieve your goals or to succeed at something. Actually, if you just allow yourself to be vulnerable and open to people, the most amazing stuff are gonna happen to you, because you're gonna attract people that are much closer to the kind of energy and community and want to help, rather than just being so closed and say, I don't need anyone's help, I can do it my own, just go away and disappear from my life, and not being able to reciprocate emotions and feelings to an extent that they were meant to be. So that's been my major failure and lessons. Yeah, big one.
Yeah, no, thanks for being so honest and sort of vulnerable and transparent with that sort of thing. I think for anyone, especially like yourself, that is so driven professionally and so ambitious, I think sometimes it's very difficult for people like us to kind of separate that persona from work and your personal life, because you feel like, especially if you're competitive, you're ambitious, you're driven, it's very difficult to switch off, you know, to be try and be a different person at home. You feel like in your brain you need to constantly stay switched on. But I think once you sort of grow and mature and learn, actually being able to have that separation, enjoy the finer things in life, like family, relationships, friends and stuff, it can actually make you even more successful in the business world. So no, thanks ever so much for sharing that. And on the other side of it, what would you say so far, again, whether it's personal work, was your sort of greatest achievement career to date?
So I think clearly that hasn't come yet, but and I think the greatest achievements, again, going back to the relationship side of things, is that finally, from the past 2 years or 3 years, actually, when the pandemic happened, I'm working on things that are just sparking, you know, I have a sparkle in my eyes anytime I wake up in the morning. I don't dread going to the office. I work with people now, besides even Space Dots and my own business partners and the team we are growing, which is just being fantastic. People just being inspired by what we say and want to work for us, even for free, which is crazy, because obviously we can't pay much at the moment. But also with the work I'm doing with Carbise Corporation in the States, they've come into my life 2 years ago during the pandemic. And the greatest achievement is really to be working with people that inspire you and push you to be the best version of yourself on a daily basis. And they do it just not because it's important for their business, obviously it is, but also because they really want to contribute to the growth of a person. And this is where, again, going back to the major failures and the lessons of the relationship, is where I started shifting onto a more, you know, human lifestyle, more sharing my voice, standing up for the things I believed were right to say and right to do, is when all these things started to happen in my life. And this is really a great achievement. Everybody thinks that a great achievement is, you know, when you got that promotion and you are working overworked and underpaid, to be fair, in most of the companies. For me, it's not about the title that you have on your LinkedIn or on your business card. Is about how much you enjoy the journey and the people that are with you. And this is where I am today. And I hope that's going to continue in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you listen to any of the super successful, powerful CEOs and entrepreneurs around the world, they all say that. They all say the exact same thing you've just said. You know, if people are kind of driven purely by money, it chips away at your soul and you just become unhappy. So you have to kind of learn to actually love the process of getting there, love the process and the people you're working with to actually achieve that goal, as opposed to just constantly chasing that big paycheck or that goal in the end. So no, completely agree. And on the side of that, with your business Space Starts, where do you see that going over the next 5 years? Where do you want that business to be in the next 5 years?
So as we are at the very early stage, in 5 years, we are striving and working and planning for is to have a business that can grow a team and can actually be paying the team. But in 5 years from now, I would like to see that business to have, just got to the point where we are helping the customers we've set ourselves to help. And we've done a product that is useful for most of them. Reason why we started Space Thoughts is because we identified the problem ourselves with my business partners at Airbus Defence and Space, where we were product managers. And most of those products we were developing together with other great companies and other great minds who never see the space, because you have to do so many steps into your qualification process. You have to follow so many standards. You have to do so many ground testing, pre-flight checks, blah, blah, blah. And then you can actually start to use that product on a spacecraft, on a rocket, or whatever else that is going into space once it's been qualified in space. So a first flight qualification, that's really the final step of functionality of that component or that new material in space. And we saw that although we had significant budgets to do those developments in a corporation like Airbus Defence and Space or many other corporations, most of those developments didn't really go up there, weren't used. So we thought, imagine the SMEs that are both or not operating in the space sector, or anyone who has a new advanced materials, a new polymer, a new high-tech fabric for, I don't know, whatever, and they want to extend, they want to branch out into the space industry, because clearly it's where everybody now is starting to go, because space is now extremely embedded with every piece of technology and every piece of actions we do on Earth. And we were like, imagine those people that have so many tiny budgets. How the hell are they going to qualify something in space if they just only need to send a tiny sample of a material into space and it's going to cost them $500,000? And we came up with Space Thoughts idea, which is exactly testing advanced materials in space, not only thermally, but also mechanically. So what I want to see in 5 years, again, besides having grown the team and clearly having closed funding rounds that are significant and relevant for all the activities we have to do and commercialize our products, is how many customers can we actually help with our products, and how many of those people that never thought they could do something for the space industry are actually doing that thing thanks to Space Thoughts. That will be, again, the most rewarding fact of having started a business for those people.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we're watching on, so we're excited to see the progress of that company. So no, thanks for sharing that. And the next thing I was going to say, it kind of ties in what we spoke about right at the beginning of the podcast, was around sort of advice. It sounds like you've had some bad advice over the years, which you didn't listen to and cracked on, and here you are. But over the years, with the different sort of, I guess, mentors, friends, colleagues, students you've worked with, what would you say is the sort of the best and the worst advice that you've been given over the years?
Yeah, so I'll start with the worst advice, because I will never forget that one. And that's come from multiple people, was just find the rich husband and be pretty.
Oh, God.
That was the worst advice I've ever received, and you'll never forget that one. But the best advice I received, actually, it's recently. So one of the people, the women I really respect in the space industry. She's Stella Guillen. She's now the Chief Commercial Officer at ESA Aerospace in Munich, although she comes from Washington. And she's been my mentor together with many others over the past years. And she was one of the first ones I told about the Space Dots idea and the whole branding, the whole things about the business. And she told me, first of all, start soon, because the name is super cool and you have to trademark that name, which is something we've done. Yeah. And the second one was broader. And she said, if you don't believe yourself insanely in what you are doing, nobody would believe you. So she said, if you believe this is something that you have to do and it's the right time to do it, and this is what you are meant to do, believe into that until everybody else will believe it. And that's the best advice I've been given so far, and that I will give to anybody, because it's really true. You can't demand people believing in what you are saying or in who you are if you don't believe in that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-belief and sort of leading by example. Great, thanks for sharing that. And the next thing I think is really useful, and we sort of ask all of our guests on our show, because it's so, with, like you mentioned, all these people sort of giving you different advice over the years, I guess the internet, potentially sometimes misinformation, some different articles have different narratives, but over the years, what would you say has been your sort of best resources that you've identified and utilized over the years, whether that be courses or programs or mentors that have sort of helped you the most segue into the space sector?
I love books. I love reading. So that's really been the major source of inspiration for me. It could be self-development books. It could be still technology related based book on even romantic stuff. It could be anything, but mainly self-development books. And because I love those ones, and again, since I was a child, together with my escapism with astronomy and physics and mathematics, I used to spend ages in libraries and just basically lose track of time when I was into a library to read books. So that's always been the major resource for me. And clearly people then, because the people around me, friends, family, they know I have this great passion for reading, they would suggest to me things that were useful probably for that specific thing or that specific topic I wanted to learn. So that's been the first thing. And then TED Talks and any other self-development talk on the YouTube, which seems so simplistic, but they've been extremely helpful to me, ranging from again psychology to law, to space technology, to how our brain works, to how we get ourselves into better habits for a greater life. TED Talk have been a major inspiration for me, and then I've also learned at the expenses of many choices I've done in my previous chunks of life, surrounding myself with people who are mainly entrepreneurs and or people who can really understand the loneliness and also the need for you to learn new things. So those people are really my rocks and my strength. And we do share on a daily basis, weekly basis. There aren't many of those people, clearly, because you can't really keep relationship with so many people on a daily basis. But we do share lots of tips on journaling, on meditation, on going to the gym such and such day of the week. So I started creating around me a community of people that we could, let's say, help each other with multiple tips. And again, it may seem a very lonely road, because clearly the more you need to do, the more you want to grow yourself into a better person, the more you have to decide of having similar or better people around you. And that's also another tip I would basically give in terms of self-development. Just being around people who can inspire you and have definitely done way more than you've done. And you can just sit back, listen and learn.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That whole reference of building that sort of support bubble, that community of people, I think it sounds so simple, but I think it's so incredibly undervalued, especially by the younger generation. I was the same as well. When you're growing up, I think, the younger generation probably worry too much about having this big network of friends, but actually how much value are they bringing to your life, and actually having that community of people, like you mentioned, that have, they're like-minded, have a similar ambitions to you. They sort of understand it. They push you to be better. But having that community of people and that supportive bubble, I think, is incredibly important. I just think it's something, unfortunately, that most people probably don't realize until later on in life. And then you start to explore sort of business and, get stressed and all the wonderful things that comes with business life. And then they realize it. And it's like you say, it's kind of your circle gets smaller as you get older, I think, as you get more experienced in life. But it's so true. There's a famous saying, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And I think, I completely agree. And I think it's something that, like you say, it's so simple when you say it out loud, but I think something that's probably undervalued. So I definitely share the same.
Yeah, I guess it's also not even a bit about being undervalued. It is difficult because you also have to basically kiss goodbye to parts of yourself that was with friends and people and partying and whatever, anything that people do and when they're young, in their 20s or when they are teens. And it's really having that courage to say, I want to receive quality advice and quality time from people I respect, and I want to do the same for them. And quality doesn't come in big numbers. So you have to just let go on many things and many people and many aspects of your life you thought were part of you, and just move on. That's probably the most difficult part. It's like, who is this person I'm blooming into? I don't know her, and she's very lonely, and she's still trying to understand who are the best people in her life, but she's doing it. So it's difficult. It's a loneliness of it. It's letting go of those things that were your comfort zone. Literally, it sounds cliche, but it is. On a daily basis, I have to make decisions on who I'm talking to. It's just very hard.
It's hard. It's super hard, and some people really struggle to do it and sort of just cut that off, because people change, we change, and we're supposed to change. That's the very essence of human evolution. We are supposed to change. We are supposed to evolve. So it's very difficult. It's easy for us to kind of say it, but I think definitely to have that confidence to say, it might be lonely and you may upset people along the way, you may lose friends, but that's completely normal and that's fine. And the people that are supposed to be in your life will end up being in your life, and you'll attract like-minded people and things that make you happy. So I couldn't agree more. And by the way, thank you, by the way, I've enjoyed this. Thanks.
Me too.
It's been brilliant. I could talk to you all day. I think our final question, so we like to close out the show to all of our guests, is, and this kind of brings the whole thing together around the whole purpose of this podcast, is to make this sector space accessible for everybody, and that sort of advice and everything. And you've given so much amazing advice already, but just finally, for anybody that is looking to enter into the space sector in 2022 or beyond, whether that's someone who is an engineer or in business development or whatever it is, someone that has that passion, that interest, that really wants to get into the space sector, but they just don't know where to start, they think it's beyond their reach, what advice would you give to those people?
First of all, is there couldn't be a better time for anybody to join the space industry. Just because now space is not anymore about these huge corporations where clearly you need to have a certain, CV, and you have to have done a certain journey in your academic career to just to pass all those tests and being accepted. Oh, I'm a new employee of this huge company. There are so many new space startups, SMEs, where you need everyone, from literally somebody who is a front-end developer that needs to create a website, to a PR agent, to a marketing professional, to a social media advisor, to anybody. So if you love what you do, whatever it is that you are doing as a social media manager, you love writing, so you maybe want to write for, you want to be a broadcaster, or you want to write news, or you want to be a journalist, or you are let's say a science communicator, and you want to just tell the stories about space, or you are an engineer, or you are a business person who's just finished an MBA and wants to join a new board for a new space startups. There is so much to do. Just to give you an idea of, starting again the business from scratch. I'm in the moment where everybody, like, we're getting people out of randomly talking to a bunch of friends over dinner or what we are doing, and the people that want to join us and want to help us with the mission of Space Dots, where we actually have to fill gaps, because clearly we are mainly engineers. So we need to fill gaps into many things, into, business, finances, and any other sorts of other things that we can't do all. And being an accountant, for example, when I spoke to my accountant at the beginning for the other business I have as consultants, he said, "Oh, I've never worked for a space company. Well, I'd love to join." So it's really just knowing what you like and look out for all those opportunities, because any space company, from the smaller to the bigger one, even corporation now at the moment have different divisions for communication, PR, and all sorts. Do not think that just because you've studied marketing, you will never make it into space. Actually, space needs a lot of good marketing. Every business needs a lot of good marketing, needs a lot of good news, very, on point news, not fake news. So it's just the best time to get involved with the space industry. Go on LinkedIn, go on the social media, find the people that you like, what they are doing, find the CEOs of companies that you love, send them a message. You'll be surprised about how many of those huge CEOs can actually answer back and give you an advice. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's, as the space market is growing, especially commercial space the last few years, I mean, it was incredible to hear back in, you were talking about this back in like 2010, where people were advising you, it's too niche, don't go into it. I mean, back in 2010, barely anyone was talking about it. Commercial space really has only become a hot topic the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So yeah, I think the fact of just going for and actually understanding and just accepting the fact that, you don't have to be an engineer, you don't need to be this, you don't need to be that. And like you say, there's so many opportunities now, countless opportunities, whether it's commercial, accountancy, marketing, like you mentioned, in these space companies. So no, I couldn't agree more. Excellent. Well, look, thanks ever so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. It's been brilliant. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I want to be respectful of your time. But it's been amazing.
Can go on forever.
Great. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks to you, Rich, and everything you were doing, guys, for the space industry. It's great. It's really great.
We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bianca. Cheers. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.